Now, as major wildfires continue to burn across the country, the International Association of Firefighters is urging Ottawa to provide immediate funding and support for overwhelmed volunteer firefighters. The group says crews are feeling the strain as wildfire fighting demands increase. Ken McMullen is the president of the Canadian Association of Fire Chiefs, a different organization. He's also the fire chief for the city of Red Deer, and he joins us now. Good morning, Ken.
Good morning. How are you this morning?
I'm doing well. How's the weather in Red Deer?
Hey, not bad this morning. I've been up since 4 o'clock our time, and I've watched the sunrise, and we're having a good day so far.
Okay, right on. Well, thanks for that. Let's set this up. What's the demand and challenge volunteer firefighters are facing across the country right now?
Well, Laura, let me put it in perspective for you. In 2016, there was 156,000 firefighters in this country, and that's made up of our volunteers, our composite departments, as well as our career departments. And in 2022, that number is now at 126,000, which is obviously a 30,000 person reduction. Of that 126,000, I think what people don't often realize is 90,000, 80% of those individuals are volunteers. And when we think about what's going on in these fires and geographically spread out in our rural communities, predominantly it's our volunteer fire services that are absolutely tied up in these wildfires right now.
That's remarkable, 80%. And I'm also not to miss I'm struck by that the numbers have shrunk since 2016. What are the supports that volunteer firefighters and volunteer fire services need?
We have gone on record as the Canadian Association of Fire Chiefs asking the federal government to look at and consider 4 things, and I'll just very quickly walk through those for you. We've asked them to consider increasing the tax incentive. Currently, volunteer firefighters are eligible for a tax exemption up to $3,000 for any money that come in as a result of their duties as a volunteer firefighter. We've asked the federal government to increase that to $10,000. Secondly, we've asked for the reinvestment in the Joint Emergency Preparedness Program. We talk about specialty training and equipment, and up until 2013, that program within the federal government allowed fire departments, career, volunteer, or composite, to apply for specialty training and equipment funding through this program, and that ended in 2013. We've talked about mental health, and you think about in Alberta, some of these firefighters are on day 36 or 37 of this event. It has a significant impact on our own mental health. So we've asked the federal government to reinvest and consider additional funds to support the mental health of first responders. And lastly, I know I'm talking lots here, we've asked the federal government to consider the introduction of a national fire advisor to work within the federal government to assist with the coordination of planning of significant resources needed for fires like the one we're facing.
Interesting. Well, we appreciate you talking. Don't sweat that. A couple of things I want to ask you about. I mean, you mentioned the mental health and that some wildfire fighters, in this neck of the woods have been at it for over a month now. How are people doing?
Tired, exhausted. I know that those sound somewhat minimalistic as far as the terms, but that's the best way to describe it. When you think about the fires out in the Parkland County and the Edson and Wetzel area started around the 28th of April, and those firefighters are still actively involved in one capacity or another. And they're taking time away from their own employment. And I think that that's the other factor that we have to consider from that volunteer component is, the volunteer model that's been around for centuries works well most of the time. What it's not designed for are these long, drawn-out events similar to what we're seeing in Alberta and in Canada right now.
Yeah. Okay. Another thing there, point 4 on coordination. I know we want to be clear about which organization we're talking about, but this International Association of Firefighters is suggesting the appointment of a national fire advisor. To this question of coordination, what difference do you think a national fire advisor might make?
And if you'll allow me, I'll just correct it so that we don't have any confusion. Our colleagues, the frontline firefighters that are in unionized fire departments, are the International Association of Firefighters. And in fact, that's not the group that's calling for the federal government to implement the National Fire Advisor. It's the organization that I have the privilege of representing, which is the Canadian Association of Fire Chiefs. And although we work very, very closely together, I want to make sure that the right organization is noted for making the ask.
For sure. Thanks for that.
No, that's fine. Like I said, we work very closely together, but they are two different groups within the fire sector. If you compare ourselves to some models that work very well, and we use our neighbors in the United States that work under the Federal Emergency Management Agency, more formally known as FEMA, there's a U.S. fire administrator within their government that works to assist with the coordination of multiple priorities in multiple divisions and ministries. And we believe that is by far the best practice. Canada is vacant in that space, and we think that these fires have really showcased the need for a National Fire Advisor.
Yeah, okay. So, on the tax incentive sort of speaks for itself. On the reinvestment in training and equipment, like what needs to happen, especially to be ready. We're in the stew this year, but for next year and the year after.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. We recognize that any investment from government is not going to solve the 2023 fire season. We are bringing this to the attention of government today for the implementation of 2024 and beyond. And something like the JEP program, we would need to implement that program very soon in order for fire departments to apply, get the funding, get the training, get the equipment. Even that would be tight for 2024, but it would certainly be something that we would have in place for the 2025 fire season for sure.
Yeah. Ken, it is great to speak with you. Thank you very much for taking our call this morning.
Thank you for your time. Thanks for your interest. Be safe and have a great day to you and your listeners.
Okay, appreciate it. Take care. That was Ken McMullen. He's the president of the Canadian Association of Fire Chiefs. He's also the fire chief in Red Deer, and that's where we reached him this morning. 19 minutes after 6 here on The Eyeopener.